Your home got bigger. Your peace got smaller. That's not coincidence. That's consequence. The world sold you a version of success that requires constant consumption, more income, more status, more things to prove you've arrived. But arrived where? At a life that looks full and feels empty? Real abundance isn't what culture promises. It's what Scripture guarantees. And the people who have found it didn't find it by getting more. They found it by strategically, quietly, and deliberately choosing less of the world and more of God. This isn't about poverty. This isn't about rejecting blessing. This is about breaking the spiritual grip of materialism before it quietly robs you of everything. That actually matters. Here's what they discovered. Hit like and subscribe to guard your spirit. 1. They stopped measuring life by what they owned. The first thing they changed wasn't their bank account. It was their measuring stick. For years, the scoreboard looked the same for everyone. Square footage, job title, the car in the driveway, the vacation on the feed. And without anyone telling you directly, you absorbed the rule. More means winning. Less means falling behind. That scoreboard isn't neutral. It's a spiritual trap. Because when your sense of worth is tied to what you own, you never actually arrive. You just upgrade the goalpost. Here's the mechanism no one explains. Materialism doesn't just consume your money, it consumes your attention. And whatever holds your attention holds your heart. Jesus didn't say where your treasure is. There your bank account will be. He said in Matthew 6:21, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Your heart follows the thing you keep measuring your life by. If that thing is possessions, your heart will never rest. It will always be calculating the gap between where you are and where you think you should be. The people who quietly escape this don't become passive. They become precise. They swap one measuring system for another. Instead of square footage, they measure peace. Instead of income, they measure impact. Instead of status, they measure obedience. That shift sounds small. It is not small. It is the difference between a life spent chasing and a life spent building what actually lasts. Stop letting the world hand you its ruler. You were never meant to be measured by it. 2. They recognized the spiritual cost of just one more. Nobody chooses materialism all at once. That's why most people never see it coming. It starts with one upgrade that made sense. One purchase that felt earned. One standard of living that became the new floor. And then the floor rises again and again until the life you're maintaining requires so much of your energy, your time, and your focus that there's nothing left for the things that were supposed to matter most. That's not ambition. That's spiritual erosion. One small compromise at a time. Ecclesiastes 5:10 doesn't soften this truth. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. Notice the word loves. Solomon isn't describing greed as an action. He's describing it as an attachment, an orientation of the heart. And the dangerous thing about attachment is that it grows quietly. You don't feel it tightening until it's already gripped tight around your peace. This is the cost that never shows up on the receipt. The prayer life that slowly shortened because there were other things to manage. The generosity that shrunk because there was always something else the money needed to do. The Sundays that got busier because the life you built required more maintenance than rest. Every just one more had a spiritual price tag you didn't see at checkout. The people who escaped this learned to audit not just their finances, but their hunger. They asked the question that breaks the cycle. Is this desire from God, or is it the world training me to want more? That question, answered honestly, changes everything. Recognize the cost before it collects. 3. They chose contentment as an act of warfare, not weakness. The world will tell you contentment is settling. That's a lie, and it's a strategic one, because if the enemy can convince you that satisfaction is weakness, he keeps you perpetually chasing, perpetually distracted, perpetually too busy acquiring to ever become dangerous for the kingdom. Contentment isn't passivity. Contentment is the spiritual discipline that cuts the enemy's most effective leash, the one he's had around your neck every time he whispered, "You need more to be enough." Paul understood this. He didn't stumble into contentment. He trained for it. Philippians 4:11 records his exact words, "I have learned, in whatever state I am, to be content." Learned, past tense, hard won. Paul wrote that from prison, not from a comfortable study with everything in order. He was describing a discipline forged under pressure, not a feeling that arrived when circumstances improved. That's the truth most people miss. Contentment is not what happens when you finally have enough. Contentment is what you build so that enough stops being a moving target. It's a decision made in advance, a weapon drawn before the craving arrives. Every time you look at what God has already given you and say, "This is sufficient," you are making a declaration of war against the spirit of lack that materialism feeds on. The people who walk away from materialism don't walk away empty-handed. They walk away armed. Their contentment is not resignation. It is resistance. And in a culture engineered to make you feel perpetually behind, choosing to be satisfied is one of the most countercultural, spiritually violent acts of faith you can make. Choose it, not because you've stopped dreaming, because you've stopped letting your dreams be dictated by the world's economy. 4. They replaced the pursuit of comfort with the pursuit of calling. Comfort is not the enemy. Comfort as a destination is. When comfort becomes the goal, every decision gets filtered through one question: will this make my life easier? And slowly, without realizing it, you start saying no to the hard things God is asking you to do, because they don't fit the life you've built around ease. You stop taking the risk. You stop answering the call. You stay where it's safe. And what looks like wisdom from the outside is actually spiritual stagnation, dressed in a comfortable house and a manageable routine. Here's the mechanism. Comfort numbs, not all at once, gradually. The same way a muscle atrophies when it stops being used, your spiritual capacity shrinks. Every time you choose ease over obedience, God doesn't call you to comfort. He calls you to fruit. And John 15:8 makes the standard clear. "This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples." Fruit doesn't grow in climate-controlled environments. It grows under pressure, in seasons, through processes that are anything but comfortable. The people who escape materialism make a specific trade. They stop asking, "What will make my life more manageable?" and start asking, "What did God put me here to build?" That question reorders everything. Suddenly, the extra income isn't for another upgrade. It's for the mission. The freed up time isn't for more leisure. It's for more obedience. The simplified life isn't about minimalism as an aesthetic. It's about clearing the clutter so the calling has room to breathe. Stop building a comfortable life. Start building an obedient one. The difference in what those two lives produce is eternal. 5. They learned to give before they felt ready. Nobody feels ready to give. That's the point. Generosity is the single most effective weapon against the spirit of materialism, because it requires you to act on faith before your feelings catch up. It forces your hands open before your heart fully believes it's safe to let go. And that tension, that moment of release before certainty arrives, is exactly where God does his most precise work in you. The widow in Mark 12 didn't give out of surplus. Jesus watched her drop 2 small coins into the treasury and said in Mark 12, 43 to 44, that she put in more than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on. She didn't calculate what was left over. She gave what she had, and Jesus didn't call her reckless. He called her remarkable, because her giving revealed something about where her trust actually lived. Not in her coins, but in her God. This is the paradox of kingdom economics that materialism cannot compute. The more you hoard, the smaller your faith gets. The more you release, the more your capacity for trust expands. Giving doesn't deplete you. It recalibrates you. It reminds your hands and your heart that you are not the source. You are a steward, and stewards don't grip, they distribute. The people who walk in abundant faith didn't arrive there by waiting until they had enough to spare. They arrived by giving when it cost them something. That act of faith broke the financial fear that materialism had built around their heart. And once that wall came down, abundance had room to move. Give before you're ready. That's not irresponsibility. That's how the kingdom works. 6. They guarded what they consumed, not just financially, but spiritually. What enters your eyes and ears is shaping your wants. And most people have no idea how deep that shaping goes. Materialism is not just a financial problem. It is a consumption problem. Every scroll through a curated feed is a drip of comparison. Every advertisement is a carefully engineered argument that what you have is not enough. Every influencer lifestyle is a silent benchmark your subconscious files away as the standard. You don't need to consciously agree with any of it. Repeated exposure does the work without your permission. And before long, the craving for more feels like your own, when it was planted there by a system designed to keep you spending. Romans 12:2 is not a gentle suggestion. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The word conform carries the image of being pressed into a mold, shaped by an outside force until you take its exact form. The world has a mold. It is built around consumption, comparison, and the perpetual feeling of lack. Every piece of content you absorb without discernment is pressing you deeper into that shape. The people who escape materialism become ruthless about the gate. Not legalistic, ruthless. They audit what they watch, what they follow, what they allow to run in the background of their minds. They understand that spiritual clarity is not just built in prayer. It is protected by what you refuse to let in. They unfollow what manufactures envy. They limit what engineers craving. They replace the noise of consumption culture with the word that recalibrates desire. Your mind is not a passive receiver. It is a garden, and you are responsible for what grows there. Guard the gate. What you allow in will eventually come out as the life you live. 7. They discovered that simplicity is where God's voice gets loudest. Strip away enough noise, and something remarkable happens. You start hearing again. This is the part no one warns you about when you begin walking away from materialism. It's not just that life gets lighter, it's that God gets clearer, because the same clutter that fills your home fills your mind. The same complexity that manages your possessions manages your attention, and a divided attention is a dulled spirit. You cannot be fully tuned to the frequency of heaven while maintaining a life engineered around the demands of accumulation. Elijah learned this the hard way. After the fire, the earthquake, and the wind, 3 dramatic displays of power, God was not in any of them. 1 Kings 19:12 records what came next. After the fire came a still small voice. Not thunder, a whisper. And the whisper only reached Elijah because he was still enough to hear it. God did not raise his volume to compete with the noise. He waited for the quiet. He still does. This is the discovery that changes everything for the people who escape materialism. They don't just find more time, they find more God. The morning that used to be consumed by checking markets, managing logistics, and planning the next acquisition becomes the morning they actually hear direction. The weekend that used to be spent maintaining the life they built becomes the weekend. They receive clarity about the life they were called to build. Simplicity doesn't shrink your world. It expands your spiritual range. And here is the thing about abundant faith that materialism never tells you. Abundance was never about volume. It was always about presence. The most abundant life is not the one with the most possessions. It is the one with the clearest access to the God who owns everything. When you simplify, you don't lose, you gain signal. And one clear word from God in the quiet is worth more than a decade of striving in the noise. Get quiet enough to hear Him, everything else will follow. You've been chasing the wrong thing, not because you're foolish, because the world is loud and it started speaking before you knew how to filter it. But now you know, and knowing changes your responsibility. The season of measuring your life by what you own is closed. The season of building what actually lasts has begun. It starts with one decision, not a perfect plan, not a complete overhaul overnight, just one moment where you look at what the world is offering and say enough. Type enough in the comments as a decision marker, a line in the ground between the life you've been living and the life God designed you for. Because the next message breaks down exactly what happens when you stop striving and start trusting. Hit like and subscribe to stay sharp for what's ahead. Simplicity is not the absence of blessing. It is the posture that makes you ready to receive it.